Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us.
Today we have our guest, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us. Dan sits on the board of 5 Hour Recovery, which is an amazing organization. And along with that, he runs some housing and he is connected with a diversion center. What do you do there?
I go up there and I just share my story to try to help other people that might have gone through what I've gone through in my life and show them that there is a better life out there.
Wow.
So why don't you just go ahead and start? And if we have some questions, we'll ask you. But so what is your story, Dan?
Wow, my story's long. So I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional home on my mother's side of the family. My mom and dad divorced at a very young age. After I think I was like 1 year old, I stayed with my mom. She married another gentleman who she thought was her life partner. And he was just very abusive, very sexually abusive to me and my sister, very abusive to my mother.
And you were 1 at this time?
No, I don't know when it started. I don't remember how young I was. So I have some of it's kind of a repressed memory that I don't remember exactly how young I was. I know that she got together with him when I was like 1.5 years old. And my sister, who is 6 years older than me, had told me when I was like, I'm going to guess on the age here a little bit, probably around 9 or 10 years old, that he had always been very physical. I don't know if she meant sexually physical at that time or if she meant abusive physical, but he was very physical with her. What I do remember is it starting with me was when I was about 10 or 11 years old was the time that I can actually remember. And it just started out with him getting drunk or high and putting hands on me. I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital as a very young child. And then it moved on to I walked in on him raping my sister in the bathroom.
Oh.
And then he started, instead of her, I would try to do anything I could to save my sister, obviously, right? So he started coming after me instead of my sister and started raping me myself. So that went on for a very long time.
Did he threaten you, like if you tell your mom? Or?
Oh, God, yeah, all the time. He would tell me, if you tell anybody, I'm going to kill you. And I really believed him. I honestly believed that if that man had a minute to kill me, he would have killed me. He broke my nose. He's broke my ribs. He'd broken my jaw. And this whole time I'm going in and out of the hospital and the cops are getting involved. But so he was really high up in a biker gang. So it's kind of like they looked the other way.
Oh, they didn't want to touch him.
Yeah, right. I don't know if it was fear or he was in their pocket or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This just continued on, man. Like he beat my mom so bad that I can remember my mom just crawling and trying to get away from him and him hitting her in the back of the head repeatedly. And he did it to me too. He never hit my sister like he hit me and my mom, but he did rape her all the time. Like it was like I caught on to it. Like when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I finally figured out what the hell was going on. And literally I would say probably every other day on my sister and at least twice a week to me.
So look at all the trauma. Number one, what he's doing to you. Then you're having to witness what he's doing to your sister. And then you're having to see your mom get beat up. Man. So.
And then at the age of about 12 years old, I had a toothache and my mom was the only one working in the house. He sold drugs and grew pot and whatever he did. And I couldn't go to the dentist because my parents couldn't afford my mom couldn't afford insurance at the time. And so he gave me cocaine. So me just rub it on my gum. And and I watched him right after that, snort it. And I was kind of like, he left the room and I was kind of like, well, hey, that looked like it felt good. So I did it.
And thus you started your drug addiction?
That's where it began. It began and it just went all bad. It continued. By the time I was age 15, I was already doing methamphetamines, cocaine, marijuana, acid, mushrooms, just anything I could do to numb the pain. Yeah. Like I had to go home to this every single single day, you know, and as a child, I didn't know how else to deal with it.
Yeah.
To be
How
honest.
would you? How would you know? My goodness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Honestly, there is no way to know. And so I just kept doing that, going to parties. I kept getting in trouble. He kept kicking my ass left and right. Like I remember freshman year of high school, I got into a fight with a guy and I got beat up. Like he was twice my size and, you know, he was quite a bit older than me, and he beat me up. And then I got home and I had a black eye, and Tim beat me up twice as bad for not winning the fight.
Oh.
Like it was a constant all the time.
I heard a name for that today called toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Where they want you to be so masculine that they actually, you know. So how long before you got out and started living away from your house?
I was 15 years old. Oh boy. I was laying in bed. My best friend at the time was staying the night, and my stepdad was out drinking and hanging out with his buddies outside and having a good old time. They had left. I'd say it was probably 1 or so in the morning, and he decided he was going to come in and beat on me and my best friend, and I had enough. Oh. And I turned it around on him, and I beat him up to the point to where he's no longer with us. So I went to prison.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
I did 7 years.
Did they take into consideration what you had been through?
Yes, and that's the only reason why I only did 7 years. They tried me as an adult.
Wow.
As an adult when you were 16?
Mm.
Yeah, because so the bad part about it is the whole time I was hitting him, I don't want to get too graphic here. I picked up an object and I was hitting him with the object, and I told him I was going to effing kill him.
Yeah.
And there was a police officer trying to stop me, and I turned on the police officer too.
Oh, yeah.
So that, and coupled with me, they considered it premeditated, is because of the way I was saying what I was saying.
Oh.
So I went to prison. I was there. I was charged for 7 years, but I did 3.5 years. By the time I got out, I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
From that point on, I was off the hook. Like I was taking every bit of my anger and hurt and sadness, getting high, and I was just going to find people because I felt invincible. Mm-hmm. You know, I felt like nobody could hurt me like he hurt me. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going back to jail several times in my life. I ended up back in prison twice and just off the hook on drugs.
Yeah.
And I did that until I was, oh boy, let's see, I was 21 years old.
Mm.
And then I got clean. I had 4 beautiful kids. And then about 5 years ago, I went back out again, got back into drugs, and I never had talked about my story, like
to your family or to your wife?
To anyone. I mean, my sister and my mom and my sister shunned me. They didn't want nothing to do with me anymore because of what I had done, right? Like, which just made me feel like worse of a person.
I always say they re-victimize the victim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely, and my whole family pretty much shunned me besides my dad, but he was in the military at the time, and I didn't see him very often.
I just want to hug you right now. I had no idea that your story was this hard. Oh man! So 5 years ago, you started using again.
Did you? Do you think you had a trigger or something that?
Absolutely, I did, and I'm gonna have to share a little bit of my wife's story here, if that's okay.
Sure.
So my wife and I, we fell in love when we were kids. And I had to leave here because I had such a bad problem with drugs and getting in trouble. And I left here, went to California for 20 years, almost 20 years, and came back. We got back together. My wife, as a child, was a sex trafficked child. She did not remember that she was until it was like a week before we were going to get married. She finally felt security again. She had remembered being molested, but she didn't remember exactly to the extent of how bad. She woke up one night freaking out and remembered everybody and everyone that had touched her, including family members. Which then she said, I just want to forget again. I just want to forget again. And my addict brain and me, because that also triggered something in my brain and brought back my memories. I said, let's just get high for the weekend.
A lot of pain. Yes.
It was. And watching my wife go through that
well,
was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
And that's how you knew how to deal with it from when you were young. And that's what you learned is you numb yourself. I mean, I did the same thing, Dan. I numbed myself for close to 20 years with drugs and alcohol, and it worked, you know. It
for a while.
I mean, I was functioning for the most part. And it wasn't a great existence, but it was all I knew. It's how I knew how to cope.
Right.
And
absolutely.
So you guys did a weekend that ended up being how many years?
5 years.
Really?
Longest weekend of my life. I went from just smoking pot now and then to putting a needle in my arm, a gram of methamphetamines 3 times a day at least, just to stay functional. I went right back to it. I went right back to scaring people, robbing drug dealers, robbing people on the sides of the streets, breaking out windows, fighting security guards at casinos. Like, I was off the hook, stealing cars, you name it, right back to it, right? Because that's how I knew how to live.
You know, Dan, I have to say this because I work with recovering addicts, and I have met so many that have, like, you've been in prison, you were had this rage, and I meet you as these nice, calm people, and I'm like, no, that's not you.
Absolutely not. It is not me today. And I'm very glad to say that God has blessed me and shown me that there is a better way, and I don't need to be that person anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I'm doing this right now, is because it took me going back out there for 5 years, stuffing a needle in my arm and losing everything I had, including my children's respect and their love and my family, to going and getting clean because of the diversion center sent out a sheriff from the sheriff's program saying, look, man, come on in here. We'll help you. We'll help you. It took them a while to get us in there, but we did. And
so
then,
they just kind of kept coming back. Were you homeless on the street?
I was homeless on the streets, living in a tent or whatever.
I want to mention that because the sheriffs, I mean, I think Everett and I think Seattle might have quite a unique program. They have an embedded social worker that goes with them that understands way more than they do. And so they kept coming, and finally you trusted them. Is that what happened?
Yeah, finally I got sick of getting high, to be honest.
Really?
I mean, what happened so I went in once before my wife did, and it was just, I had shot up so much drugs that drugs weren't doing much anymore. And me and my wife got into a big argument, and I'm like, well, fuck this. Then you stay with it, do whatever you're doing. I'm leaving. I'm going to treatment. I went in there for 3 weeks. I was there. I was probably a week from getting to bed, and I got a whole bunch of money from Social Security. And I said, well, I want to go to the casino. I just wanted to go get high and find my wife, who's my life partner, and try to get her to come back. And so I stayed gone from the diversion center that time for like 3 weeks. And me and my wife were sitting in a tent. I watched her go through a 100 needles, looked like a pincushion. And she said, that's it. I'm done. You can go or not, but I'm done. I didn't go right away with her. She went. And then Heather Banks found me in a place I'd never, ever hung out. I mean, like, I don't even know how she found me. I think she was following me around.
Yeah, she's magical, I think, because she can find people.
Right? So, and just walks up to me and says, I got a message from your wife. And I'm like, well, what's that? And she's like, your wife said that if you don't show up at the diversion center, you guys have nothing else to talk about and you're getting a divorce. I was at the diversion center the next day on my wife's birthday. I went in. I went to treatment the next day. They weren't even playing. They're like, "Nah, you're leaving tomorrow." And I'm like,
"Wow, that's
gone the next day."
That's amazing because usually it takes weeks to get a bed.
Right. Well, I was down to 113 pounds. I'm a big guy. I'm not a little guy.
How tall are you, Dan?
I'm 5'11". I weigh 220 pounds.
Yeah, you're tall.
I'm not a little guy.
No.
So 5'11" at 113 pounds was like my skin was hanging off. Like, pretty bad.
And, you know, it's interesting because the women always say, if I say how did you get clean and sober? They usually say jail or the hospital. So you just kind of went, enough is enough.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've had endocarditis 3 times. I was left floating face down in a pond, woke up choking on the pond water, and they had the yellow tape around me, thought I was dead. I've been beaten. I've tried committing suicide several times. And this is all because of that stuff that happened to me. And I didn't even know this. I didn't even know that's what was wrong with me.
Oh, wow.
So I went to treatment and I started, start talking about my story and telling people what happened to me as a kid, and it finally clicked. I'm like, oh my God. And then I went back to thinking about how I was shooting at my mom with heroin at 8 years old and thinking, God, I just hate this woman, to, oh my God, that was her escape from what he was doing to her.
Wow.
And honestly, that's when it all clicked. I mean, and it hasn't been easy staying clean. I've been clean 2 years and 8 months or something like that. And it hasn't been the easiest road, right? I got a good job and I love what I do. I run a clean and sober facility and I help save people's lives every day. And so when you asked me to do this video, I was a little nervous.
Were you? Yeah. I was like, how am I going to ask him to talk about this?
It's not easy. The testimony is always...
Because honest, we stay so ashamed of it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the shame, because that's something that we've been just really circling around. So talk about the shame.
I felt like, okay, let me rephrase that, because you know what? I didn't feel this way. He made me feel like it was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. That's what abusers do.
Yeah.
Right? Anytime he had to hit me afterwards, he would be like, now, if you wouldn't have done this, this would not have happened. So this is your fault.
Yeah.
You know? And I believed it.
Yeah.
And I believed
of course.
And I grew up in an era where homosexuality was not open. Sleeping with a man was very disgusting when I was growing up. So for him to do that to me, I couldn't talk. I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I felt so ashamed that I was allowing it to happen, even though I wasn't allowing it to. It was
no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, for men, I mean, I think women have a hard time too, but men are starting now to talk about it more, but it's harder for them. And that's why Kevin and I decided to do this together, because it is such a different experience in talking about it, in coming out with it. And the first thing you said was you had never told your story. So what has changed for you since you've been telling your story?
Oh man. So 5-hour recovery. I'm glad you plugged him before I did. This gentleman, Johnny Ray, is just amazing, right?
Yes.
That guy, he made me sit down and give my testimony on a video. And I want to be able to help people instead of hurt people. I've hurt people for so long. Now it's my time to give back, I feel like. And I feel like this is my calling from God. This is what God wants me to do, is to get out here, try to show people that it's okay, that our past does not have to define us. Yeah, we remember it, but we can move on and live a life without it letting it define us anymore.
Amen.
Yeah, which until we talk about it, it does define us, right?
Right. And every time I do, I feel so much better.
Yeah. If we allow the shame to define us, then we'll never get out from behind the shame. If we allow it to be what, we're hiding, what the secret we won't let out, then we're defined by it.
Yeah.
Right.
And we talk a lot about being brave enough to tell your story, to find the right people to tell it to. And you were in rehab, so it sounded like a safe place. Were you shocked by when you told your story, the looks on their face? Were you like, oh shit, this isn't normal?
Well, I was really shocked because I went to a facility that was all men and they were all crying. And a lot of them were like, man, I understand. And some of them had gone through what I'd gone through.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I do have a gentleman that would like to do a podcast for you guys next week. He's one of my sponsees who's been through the same thing as like he wants to help too. I mean,
okay. Yeah.
We don't have to hide it anymore.
No, that's the whole point.
Thing.
Yeah.
We need to bring it out because people don't understand. I mean, there's a high percentage of people who are incarcerated because of drugs and so forth, because they use drugs to cope. And
because of their childhood trauma.
And they're also there's just so many people who are homeless because home isn't safe. So they run away and they end up on the streets and they're doing drugs because that helps them cope with where they are. But people don't realize the scope of it because men just don't talk about it. But if they realize the scope of it, it would certainly get the word out that this is, really important.
Yeah.
To talk about.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I know that's, one of the main things that I try to do here is I ask everybody to be transparent with me, whether it's something they're ashamed of or not, because I've heard it all. I've heard it. I've seen it. I've been through it.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, there's not much anybody could tell me that would blow my mind anymore.
Well, and that's what it takes. It takes someone who's been through it, who's realized there's a better way of dealing with it, better way of coping. You can heal, you can get past it, and the shame doesn't have to define you. Then you can reach back and say, hey, I know what you've been through. I've been there. I can relate. You don't have to be ashamed with me because I know your story. I get it.
Right. Absolutely.
That's how we got to change the story, the storyline.
How did you start to begin to find healing and to find forgiveness? Because those are really difficult. Most people tell me, I will not forgive. And one of my clients told me, I will never forgive my abuser. And then she watched Medea, who is Tyler Perry as a grandma. And Medea talked about forgiveness. And she called me, she goes, I just watched Medea. Now I have to forgive.
So for me, I believe in God. And I believe in letting God handle all my stuff in my life. As far as forgiveness, I have forgiven him.
Mm-hmm. How was that? Was that hard?
It was harder for me to forgive myself than it was for me to forgive him.
We talked about that last week. Yeah.
We haven't posted it yet, but we just did an episode. I think that's also the beginning of learning to forgive is how do you forgive yourself? I mean, you really got to start there. And it makes no sense to someone who doesn't understand the issues because, we're the survivors. We're the ones that got, this was done to us. And yet we have to figure out because we're so hard on ourselves.
Absolutely. I'm my worst own critic. Yeah. Absolutely. Any day of the week.
Well, and we know so much about us that we are either ashamed or we're not really, we want to change. And so we just rag on ourselves about it.
Right. Tear ourselves through the woods and whatever. Yeah. And so for me, I would say that the moment that I went back into church after getting out of treatment, and I just asked God to help me deal with this because, every time I've tried to just put it away, that my best decisions got me high. 100%. That is so true. Right. Yeah. And for me, that's where it does take me. Anytime I try to just decide, okay, I don't want to feel anymore, that's when I'm going to get destruction in my life, my own self-destruction. Yeah. So I've learned to pray about everything before I do it. And just be like, God, okay, is this the right way to do this or whatever? But I asked God how to start healing from it. And he kind of told me I had to forgive him. And to be honest, at first I was mad at God for telling me that. I'm like, how can you tell me to forgive this?
Yeah.
Crap. You know what I mean?
That goes against everything you're feeling.
Right.
And then time went on. I started thinking about it and I talked to my wife, who's a wonderful woman, is very supportive in everything I go through. And she's like, well, maybe that's just a step you need to take, not for him, but for you. Yeah. And I went, oh, I gotcha. Yeah. And so, it took me a little while. And then I finally prayed to God and I said, you know what? I forgive him. Wow. Now I'm just going to forgive myself a little bit better. I'm working on that. Yeah. Like taking compliments. Me and my buddy Johnny aren't good at taking compliments.
No, you both aren't. And Johnny's really bad, but he's doing better, wouldn't you say?
He is. Yes. He is. He's learning to receive them, and I've been using that word a lot. But it was ridiculed so long that I don't know how to take a compliment.
He's relating.
It's hard, huh? I mean,
when you got to the place of forgiveness, what do you feel changed in your healing and your relationship with others and yourself?
So when I was able to do that, my attitude changed. Like I didn't wake up pissed off at the world anymore for some reason. And it was, I don't know exactly when it happened, but it just happened gradually, right? I felt like my life wasn't over anymore. I've always had this like dreaded for like years and years and years and years because I had these nightmares all the time. I mean, just repeated the nightmares of what I did and of some of the stuff he did, but more so what I did, what I did to him. And so once I forgave him, that went away. It was something in my brain went away.
That happened to me. I had night terrors my whole life. And I prayed to God to forgive my perpetrator because, long story short, we were getting married, my wife and I wanted my whole family to be there, including the perpetrator. And I couldn't be around him without, having fallout. So, but I told my wife that I wanted him to be there. And she's like, well, how's that going to happen? And I'm like, I don't know.
And she's like Amy. She's so supportive. And
so I prayed for God to help me forgive him. And I got to that place.
Right.
Well, shortly after that happened, God healed me from the night terrors too. I didn't have them anymore. It was
just happened too.
Yeah.
You know what? Us healing.
Yeah. God does want to heal us.
What I love to hear about this is, we talk about this a lot, about telling your story, and there's so much power in saying the words, and that, everybody walks through healing different. But when we surrender, and forgiveness is surrender, because when my clients say, I won't, I can't, I don't push them because I know they're not ready yet.
Yeah.
But when we choose forgiveness, something changes because they no longer have power over us.
I think we're surrendering to God to let God take it off of us. It's not
We're giving
mine
our
anymore.
baggage to God.
Yeah, I'm giving it this baggage, and I'm not going to carry it anymore. But what happens is God does take it, and we don't have that load anymore. It felt like,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like that big elephant sitting on your shoulders has been lifted off, and now it's maybe just a mouse.
Yeah. But it's
That squeaks
manageable.
once in a while.
We learn how to move on from it, and that's like the major step in our healing. And like you said, that feeling you got, I describe it as hope. I mean, we get hope when we get through that.
Yeah.
It's like, finally, I have hope.
Yeah. Freedom. What I was going to say is I love what you said about it's still a struggle. I think that there's this thing I notice that when people get clean and sober, people are like, okay, bam, they're back.
Yeah.
And it's such a process. And I love it that you say that. And I love it that you have your partner who walks through this with you, but that, it doesn't mean, rainbows and butterflies.
Right.
I mean, it means, like you said, I have hope. I know I have a life and I know I'm going to live. But, it's like we would be remiss to tell people, oh, your life will be, wonderful, but it will be better. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Not necessarily easy, but it's better.
Yeah.
Right. And it didn't just happen overnight either. And it took a lot of hard work. Like everybody always says in the NA halls, oh, get on your pink fluffy cloud. I never got a pink fluffy cloud.
Yeah.
I never saw no pink fluffy cloud either.
No.
So I don't know what they're talking about. It was a long road, and it wasn't easy. I mean, it's gotten easier. I still get triggers. I still get the urge to get high, but I just don't act. I just make different choices.
Yeah.
Well, we're more aware. You become, I think one of the huge parts is you become so self-aware. You recognize so many things because you go through and see what the process was that got you there, got you to this point, and how you got to be such a train wreck that, I was a total train wreck. And then learning what it was that you can do to cope that doesn't get you there, that doesn't wreck your life.
Yeah. And that you said do the work, and the work is so important. And what I love about working with people in recovery is they understand every single day you have to do some work.
Yeah. You're on it.
And to me, that's beautiful because when I coach people that aren't in recovery, they don't get it. They're like, well, maybe I could do it for 5 minutes once a week. I'm like, no, every day we need to take some time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they say if you put 10% of the effort that you did to finding drugs to stay clean, you'll succeed. Right? So that's easy.
Holy cow, I've never heard that, but I put a lot of effort into getting wasted. And I spent a lot of time. Boy, yeah, that was a lot of wasted time. But
absolutely.
I think the main point is just we get to this place where the story doesn't affect us like it used to. And so we can share our story, and we have to be, aware of who we're sharing it with and so forth, because it might not affect us as much, but it affects other people. I mean, some of the stuff we tell people, we have to kind of edit in our own, because, we don't want to be, but to get past that point is where the real healing begins. And then you can turn around and help others. And I'm so amazed that you're there and you're doing it. And you've gotten just over 2 years sober, and you're still working on that, but it's amazing you're helping those that are in that same place.
Yeah. And, we talk about volunteering, and it's so good to volunteer and help people, but it helps us too.
Yeah.
It does. And that's, and I'm going to be honest, about 60% of the reason why I started sharing my story was to help myself. Now it's more so to help other people. But in the beginning, it was to help me because it was my way of getting it out of me. I had to get it out of my head. I was tired of dealing with this problem on my own, and I didn't know how else to do it. And like going to the diversion center is like, it was the opportunity, right? Because those are my people. They understand me and I understand them. I wanted to go get back to the place that helped save my life, and if that means there's a gentleman in there that's been through what I've been through, and I can tell him my story and say, but look at me now. I have a place to live. I own 3 vehicles. I have a good job. I help people stay clean and sober every single day. I counsel every single day. I mean, I literally work 2 jobs. Well, kind of 3 jobs.
Yes.
Wow.
So, it's crazy, but I love every minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see myself ever doing anything different. I mean, my long-term goals is like, helping Johnny and having my own clean and sober facilities, not running them for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And seriously, if we're going to get help, who do we want to hear from? Someone. We want to hear from someone who's been through it. I always say, like, we go to these Christian women's groups and they got my hands off, they're all, oh, God is so good. And he is, but it's like, they don't know what trauma is. And I want to hear from someone who's been there,
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, who better to help a drug addict than a drug addict?
Absolutely.
That's it. I mean, some normie comes up to us and it kind of scares us, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because we don't understand what they're doing. We're like,
exactly.
What?
Yeah.
We think they're trying to put us in jail or something because they don't get it,
Yeah.
Right. And that's why families have such a hard time, because a lot of them are normies. And so they think, okay, he's good now. Let's move on. But it's like, it's still a recovery process. Everything is a process. And, every day, every time you share, and just making those connections is what's going to make the big difference.
I agree.
So you got to the place of starting your healing because of your situations, but what would you say to someone who's, who might be listening and is trying to figure out, okay, what can I do now? What
next?
Where do I turn? What helped you when you were first trying to get to the place of healing?
Find a friend that you can trust with everything you got. Somebody that you can tell your deepest, darkest secret to, and they're not going to tell nobody else. And open up. That's the hardest part, is opening up. Once you open up and tell your story, it's like freeing yourself. It's so hard to explain the emotion you'll go through. Yeah, it's hard. It's scary. But once you've done it, man, your life will just change. I don't know how else to do it. And forgive the person.
Yeah. It's like it loses its power, right?
Right. Yeah. Stop letting them have control over you. You don't have to no more.
Yeah. I talk a lot about validation, and I think that validation is what telling your story is. Yeah. And that's why I brought up when you told your story and you're looking around and when I first started sharing my story, people are I'm looking out and there's tears everywhere. And I'm like, this must be sad.
Right. Yeah. I've had that happen a lot. And I've had people come up to me and like, how do you do that? They're like, you sit up here and you just tell your whole life story so raw and open and cry through it and like everything that you do, and you just do it. You're not embarrassed? I'm like, no. One of my sponsees, he's gone through the same thing as me, and he's like, how do you just tell people you were molested like that? And I'm like this. I was molested.
Hey, I was molested.
That's how you do it, right? I mean, I don't know how else to explain. He's like, no, I mean, you're so open. And I'm like, well, you can't really, if they're going to tell somebody, you're going to have to be open. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I just do it now. It's it's to save lives.
You can't change what happened to you, but you can change what your story is going to be from now on.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's why it matters so much.
Absolutely.
And I think what's a really valuable part of your story is that children who are abused are usually groomed. They're told it's their fault. So as they become adults, they can't make sense of that because they believe it, because it's the adult in their life has told them this. So, it's more than coming.
They blame themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing is, even after he was gone and it had stopped, I still felt like he had control over me.
Yeah. He was in your head.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Dan, thank you so much for sharing your story and being so candid. And we always close with prayer, but we give people a chance to say goodbye if they want to get out, if prayer isn't their thing. But if you'd like to join us in prayer, that's how we close out. And you can pray or not pray, whatever you'd like to do.
I would love to listen to you all pray.
Okay.
All right, Dan. So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, thank you for all the blessings you've given us, especially your work in our lives that has made all the difference, not only to us, but those around us and those that we can help. Lord, I just pray that your work in Dan would just continue to pour out to all those men that have never heard anyone say those words before. I was molested. And that need to hear someone, that need to realize it wasn't their fault, that they do deserve to heal. Lord, I just pray that you would continue to pour out your blessing on Dan and his family and continue to give him the strength to keep working every day, and keep persisting every day, Lord. And I just pray for your strength and your grace in his life, Lord. Just I love that you have given him such a sense of humor, and it's your sense of humor, because God, you have a sense of humor too. Lord, I just thank you for his presence in this place, and I can pray that you would continue to bless the work he is doing for other survivors and other men that need to know that you do want to love them and heal them, and that you accept them just as they are, Lord, and they just pray that they would turn to you in your name.
And Father, I just thank you so much for the work that Dan is doing, that you can use such a horrible thing to be able to help others. And I'm so grateful for the work he's doing with the Diversion Center and 5R Recovery. And Lord, I just pray as he continues to walk this path that you will give him strength and wisdom. And again, I thank you for his sense of humor. And Father, I'm so grateful that there is a freedom that comes when we're brave enough to tell our story. And Lord, it is hard the first time to tell that story. And I just thank you that you've given all three of us the courage to say the words and then to start the recovery process, Lord. And I thank you that it's a process, that we're not just flooded with everything at once, and that you are just such a good, good God, and that you want good for all of us. And I just pray that you will continue to bless the work that we're all doing in your son's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Dan. That was